Hey guys, welcome to part 4 of my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter. So if you missed parts 1, 2, and 3, I'll link the playlist right up here so you can go ahead and watch them all the way through if you'd like. Parts 1 and 2 focused on my higher end palettes, while parts 3 and 4 are going to be more affordable and drugstore options. So hopefully this is going to be the last video in the series. We'll see how things go. I do still have a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to go through these as quickly as I can, but also give you some information about them at the same time. So first up, we have my NYX collection, and I can already tell that there's going to be quite a few I'm going to declutter from NYX. A lot of these have been discontinued and are ones that I just don't use anymore. So let's start out with this one. This is Mystic Petals, and this one actually was a pretty recent purchase. Actually, both of these were. So we have Dark Mystic right here, and then Midnight Orchid. I bought these, I believe, at Walgreens, and I really loved the color stories of them, but I just kind of felt like the quality wasn't quite there, and they were a little bit more on the expensive side too. So while I did really love the color stories, I never really used them that often just because the formula was not my favorite, and I have other palettes in my collection that I feel like perform better than these. So I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter these. I also have these Ultimate Shadow palettes, and these are very hit and miss. I felt like this one was okay formula-wise. It's not the best. Again, it was a little bit more on the powdery side, but it wasn't like the most horrible thing. This one, though, the cooler toned one, I had lots of trouble with this formula. I just felt like it was very dry, really patchy. And then this one, I just really didn't get a lot of use out of. I know a lot of people liked these multi-finish ones where it was kind of like the same shade but in different finishes. And I don't know, I just never really got use out of this one at all. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter all 3 of these as well because I just never reach for them. Next up, we have these 2 little Ultimate Edit palettes. These I felt like were okay. I got these pretty recently as well. We have, let's see what the shades are. This one's Ash, and then this one is Warm Neutrals. And from what I remember, these were okay as far as the formula. Let me just try one out a little bit and kind of refresh my memory. You know, quality feels like it's all right. The shimmer shades feel buttery and soft. The matte shades, yeah, I mean, they seem like they have decent pigmentation. If I remember correctly, I liked them. I wasn't crazy like in love with them, but I thought they were pretty good. Another one that I really loved, I don't think they make this one anymore, is the Lid Lingerie palette. This one was so cute and so pretty, and I have to check and see if these are still made, because if they are, I definitely recommend this one. This was an all matte palette, and it's just a really quick and kind of easy neutral palette. I mean, even this purple, like, it had great pigmentation for a NYX palette, and I know some of them are very hit and miss. Like, as you've seen, some of these are not so great, and then other ones that I'm going to get to were really fantastic. So this was one of the really good ones. So I think I'm going to hang on to this one. And these were also some of my favorites from NYX, the Perfect Filter palettes. They were so beautiful, and I felt like the formula was wonderful. This one was Rustic Antique, and these, if I remember correctly, were when NYX really started to hike up their prices. Like when these launched at Ulta, I want to say they were like $25 each, and everybody was going crazy on social media about it because they're like, NYX, what are you doing? But I just felt like the quality of these was so worth it. They just were like nothing that NYX had ever done before, because before that you kind of had like these palettes, which again were just okay, but these were just at another level, and they were charging more for them. But you know, I don't mind if the quality is going to be better, then hey. So I ended up buying all of them. So this one was the Rustic Antique, and then we had the Golden Hour. This was another favorite. It's just a beautiful neutral palette, and some of the shades in it kind of remind me of Soft Glam a little bit. And then this one was All of You. This was another really beautiful one. It had sort of subculture vibes, but without the terrible formula. And again, like, look at the pigmentation on these. It was really, really stunning. I kind of wish they still made these, actually. I don't know if there's anywhere you can still buy them, but they're fantastic, so I'm definitely going to keep them. Another favorite when it came to NYX palettes was the Avant Pop palette. This one was in the shade Nouveau Chic. I think they had a few of these, and I'm not sure, again, if they still make these. I know I saw them at Target not too long ago, but I want to say they're discontinued now. But this is another favorite palette from NYX for me. This one is very old, so I don't know if I still should be using it or not, but I thought it was pretty because it's colorful, but it's more muted colors, so they're ones that I would still wear. And I mean, I think the formula was really good on this one too. It was very similar to the Perfect Filter ones in terms of pigmentation and just blendability. It was really nice. So I'm going to hang on to this one for now. This was another one that I got at Target. This was the Go-To palette, and let's see, it was in the shade Wanderlust. I think they had a few of these as well. And this was a face palette that had eyeshadows and then a highlighter, blush, and bronzer. And just looking at this blush right here, it almost looks like it's kind of starting to like change color and do something funky. This one is really super old, so I think I'm going to declutter this one just because I'm not sure if it's good anymore. Another great formula that NYX had were these In Your Element palettes, and I believe these were really more on the expensive side too, but I had Earth, Metal, and Fire. So this was the Earth one, and it had just like these really beautiful earthy tones, very warm toned overall, but you had this pop of green and gold, and the pigmentation again was just phenomenal. This one had a little bit of fallout here, but you can see like the pigmentation's definitely there. And I did get quite a bit of use out of these. I think I'll probably hang on to them just for now, see if I use them in the near future. If I don't, then I'll go ahead and declutter them. But this one was Metal, and this one actually I'm probably just going to get rid of because I can tell you right now I'm not going to use this one again because it's an entire palette of all shimmer shades. And while I did think again the formula was good and some of these shimmers are absolutely gorgeous, I just never reach for palettes that have all shimmer shades, although this is kind of making me feel like I want to keep it just because some of these would be so beautiful on the lid, but maybe I can find somebody in my life that would prefer to use this one. And then this one was Fire, and this one was definitely, again, a warm tone palette overall, really pretty colors, a little bit more bold and vibrant, and kind of has some Natasha Denona sunset vibes a little bit. But you also have this blue in here, which is a little bit different. So, I mean, this one was a really pretty one too. I think I'll just keep it for now. And then we have the Grind and Ignite palettes. These are fairly recent. I want to say they came out last year, maybe the year before, and they were limited edition, so I don't believe you can get these anymore. But these were really pretty. I'm not sure if I was in love with the formula of these. I feel like it was okay. Let me just swatch a shade or two and see if I can kind of remember. Yeah, it seems like it's pretty good. So yeah, this one had a really pretty kind of earthy vibe, and then Ignite was, oh geez, I hardly even used this one. There's a couple of shades that I used and that was about it. So yeah, I mean, these are really pretty brand new, and I don't know why I never reached for these that much because they are really pretty, but I just didn't fall in love with them like I did like the Perfect Filter palettes. So I might just go ahead and give these to my sisters because I think they'll probably get a little bit more use out of them than I will. And then this one was the Contour Intuitive palette. These were a semi-recent release as well. I think I got this one at Ulta, and it was a face palette. So you had highlighters, you had 6 eyeshadows, and then a blush. I rarely ever used this, and I didn't feel like the formula was as great on this one as some of the others. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in my declutter pile as well. All right, so in my next drawer, I have some Essence palettes and also just a few other random drugstore brands. So let's start with this one right here because this is one I've held on to for such a long time. NYC is no longer in business anymore, which is really sad because there were a few of their products that I really liked a lot and they were super, super affordable. This Lovatics line by Demi Lovato was one of my favorites in the brand. A lot of her collab products with NYC were fabulous, including this palette, which looked remarkably similar to the original Urban Decay Naked palette. I feel like it was almost supposed to be a dupe. But back in the day, my sister had been looking for a dupe for the Urban Decay Naked palette because it just wasn't in her budget. And I remember telling her about this one and she ran out and bought it. And she thanked me many, many times for showing her this palette because the quality on it was just so incredibly good. The shades were beautiful. They were so like soft and buttery and blendable. And it was just the prettiest palette ever. It's so old right now. I don't know that I would necessarily want to use it. I've held on to it all this time because it was such a good drugstore option, especially back then. I feel like in the last couple of years, drugstore formulas have come such a long way, but back then, drugstore was super hit and miss, more miss than not, and this one was such a big hit. So, you know, I do have the original Naked palette, which I think I would reach for more than this one. So I should probably declutter it, but it's just kind of one of those makeup items that I've hung on to just for nostalgia. So, I mean, it's small, it doesn't take up a lot of room, so I may keep it just for now. I don't know. I'm just going to put it over here and I'll decide later. Next, we have two Model's Own palettes. This one's Vintage Rose, and then this one is Barely There Too. This was a brand that used to be at Ulta, and I don't believe they are anymore. I haven't seen anything from them in a long time. And I just felt like the formula was okay. It was not anything special, and I felt like they were very hit and miss. I did really like the color story of this one. I love the purples, but just formula-wise alone, I'm not going to hang on to these because I don't think they were that great. And then Barely There too. This one was a little better. Formula-wise, I thought it was pretty good. And I loved these peachy tones. I thought it was really, really pretty. I actually just built myself a peachy toned ColourPop palette. You may have seen it on my Instagram page. So it's very similar to this actually. It's just those really pretty light peaches. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and declutter this. And then next I have all of these Color Story palettes. I did a video on these, I think it was last winter. They came to Target and I was very interested in this brand and I couldn't decide on the website which ones I wanted to try, so I ended up ordering them all. I want to say they were like 10 bucks. And the formula on these also was very hit or miss. I remember just feeling meh about them. They're not super good. I think this one in particular was the best of the bunch just because for some reason warm tones just seem to formulate a little bit better than others. But, you know, a few of them are kind of getting hard pan over here. I mean, it's just not a great quality formula, but I was hoping they were going to be more of like a hidden gem type of situation. They weren't. So we had Decadent, we had Karma, this one right here, which was a little bit more kind of cool tones mixed with warm tones. I mean, they were all really beautiful color stories, but I just don't see the point in holding on to these anymore because I never ever reach for them. I have so many palettes that have better formulas than these that I don't see the point. This one was Mirage. That one was beautiful. Velvet Rose. This one was like pretty much an all cool tone palette. Really pretty. And then we have Mystic Trance. This one was also a cooler tone palette, but I feel like somebody in my life who's more of a beginner with eyeshadow that isn't looking for a super pigmented formula would get more use out of them. I don't want them to just sit here and go to waste. So next up we have some Essence palettes, and we have these three right here, which I want to say came out last year maybe, and these were really cute. The I'm with the Band palette I just love the aesthetic of because all of the shade names were like 90s bands, and if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I'm super into 90s alternative music. So when I saw this, I loved it just for that. I felt like the formula was okay. It's not my favorite, but I do really love the shades in here, and I can definitely make them work. So I think I'm going to hold on to this one for now. Also, the Spice Up Your Life palette. This one was also a really pretty warm tone palette. It's actually a pretty close dupe for the Too Faced Gingerbread palette, the original one. I did a video where I compared this one to that, and I'm not saying the formula is anywhere close to that because it isn't. I think it was pretty decent in terms of pigmentation. It was okay. And again, you can make it work, but it's not going to compare to Too Faced as far as that goes. But a lot of the shades in here lined up perfectly with the Gingerbread palette, so it was really pretty. I think I'll probably keep it for now. I did really like this one. This one I think I'm going to declutter though because I never used it. I swatched it in the beginning when I first got it and never touched it again. It's Fairy Wings and Magical Things, and it's a really beautiful pastel palette. I just don't wear pastel colors that much, particularly pastel blues, which there are a lot of in here, and I just felt like these didn't quite live up to the other ones as far as formula. For some reason this one was just very, very sheer and like powdery and chalky looking on the skin. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. This one's actually a newer Essence release, so I'm definitely going to be keeping this. This is Magical Mystical Me, and this one, for some reason, I bought it on Ulta and it disappeared like the next day, very shortly after it launched, and I'm not quite sure why or if it's ever coming back, but I did think it had kind of Norvina vibes. I was hoping it would be a dupe for the Norvina palette, and I was planning to do a video on that, and then it disappeared, and I felt like, well, what's the point of doing a video if you guys can't purchase this? So it's just kind of been sitting in my collection. I'm going to have to just do some digging and see if it is still available somewhere, but that's that one. Next we have the Be Beautiful eyeshadow palette. And this one was really pretty. I got this at Ulta not long ago. I felt like the formula was pretty decent. I mean, I feel like Essence's formula is never like fantastic, wonderful, like the best, but I felt like the matte shades were really soft and blendable on this one. And the shimmer shades, while they're not like super metallic, they don't pack a huge punch. I think for more subtle looks, this palette was really great. And I did like the color story in here, so I'll probably keep this one for now. And then we have these two palettes right here. These are the Yes I Can and I Flirt, and I think these are still available at Ulta. I think I saw them recently, but I was not a fan of these palettes. I did a video on it a while back, and I just felt like the formula was not good. These blended away on my eyes. They faded like really quickly after applying them. They kind of all blended together when I was trying to create looks and got really muddy. So I think, again, this might be something that is better for a beginner, somebody who just wants like a sheer wash of color that isn't trying to do anything super complicated. And you definitely have to use a primer under this. So I'm probably going to put these in my declutter pile, even though I thought they were really pretty and I had high hopes for them. So let me just show you quickly what this one looks like, the natural look. I mean, they were really beautiful. I loved like some of these shades right here, these duochromes. They looked so pretty, but unfortunately I just feel like they're not long lasting enough for me and just a little bit harder to work with. So anyway, that is that drawer. Okay, so moving on, I have some palettes from COL-LAB, Kokie Cosmetics, and then COVERGIRL. So let's start with these COL-LAB palettes. This is a brand I feel like does not get enough love here on YouTube. These palettes are quite good. They are available at Sally Beauty, and I think they're about $15, but if you like smaller, more edited down palettes like this, I think it's definitely something to check out because the formula on them is so good. It's really great. I know Tati's talked about this brand before, but I don't see a lot of other YouTubers bringing it up all the time. And really, I feel like I should talk about them more because I do really enjoy this formula a lot. I think it's super creamy and buttery and rich, easy to blend on the eyes. I just really have enjoyed these palettes overall. And like I said, I think I'm kind of getting more into these smaller, more edited down palettes these days. So I think these are a wonderful drugstore option. So we have the shades Tropic Like It's Hot. And then this is another favorite of mine. This one is called After Hours. Really beautiful, cool tone palette with the greens in there. It's gorgeous. This one is called Get Ready With Me. This is the first one that I ever purchased. And some of these are more new. Like I want to say these first two that I showed are a newer collection and they only launched a few at first. And this was one of the first ones. As you can see, it's really dirty. It's gotten a lot of use, but this is just like a basic everyday neutral palette. And then this is another one that they had released early on. This one's Best of the Day. And this one actually reminds me a lot of Modern Renaissance. It has those vibes for sure, but just a smaller version of it. And then I think this was one of the newer ones. This one's called Sunset Dreams. So if you like a little bit more color, this one was really beautiful. This blue in here is so gorgeous, and the yellow too, actually. If you like just these brighter, more like tropical colors, this one's a beautiful one. And then the last one is Strike a Rose, and I think this is one of the newer ones also. As you can see, it hasn't gotten a lot of use yet. I got these maybe a couple months back, some of the newer shades, but this one looks really pretty if you like these kind of more dusty pinks, and they have a purple in here. So anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys think of COL-LAB down in the comments, if you've tried anything from them, or if you're a fan of these little palettes like I am, because I just think they're such an underrated brand. And then next up from Kokie, we have these two palettes right here. These are brand new. I showed them in a Sunday haul a couple of weeks ago, and we have Arabian Nights and Pure Magic, and I was super impressed with the formula of these. I felt like they've really come a long way in terms of their eyeshadow. Some of the ones you're going to see coming up are not the best formula, unfortunately, so I was very happy to see that they have improved quite a bit. So there's this one right here, a little bit more brighter colors mixed in with some warm neutrals. And then the Pure Magic palette has some cooler tones in it, as well as maybe just a couple of warmer tones, but overall I feel like the vibe of this one is really cool. You have these pretty greens and purples and this pink right here. So I definitely like these and plan to hang on to them for a while. And then we have the Pro collection. These came out maybe a year or two ago. I did a video on them, and they actually look like Natasha Denona dupes, particularly this one. It looks like one of her larger palettes that she has, and I was very excited about this, especially because it was supposed to be like a pro formula, but everything about this palette was just not that great, from the packaging, separating here, to the formula. I felt like they muddied on the eyes. When you swatched them, they seemed like they were okay. But applying them to the eyes was a different story. I felt like the shimmers were kind of really hard to pick up. The matte shades were like powdery. They would blend away on the eyes. It was just hard to use. So I think I'm going to get rid of these, not to mention the fact that they had a really strong chemical smell. I think it's probably due to this plasticky kind of packaging. I don't think it was the shadows themselves, but it was a little bit off-putting. And then this one right here, I think this is the one that was really like the packaging was totally separating and coming apart. This one was beautiful though. I mean, I love the color story. I just wish the formula was a little bit better. But I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter these just because I really don't use them. And then next up we have these artist palettes from Kokie, and these honestly, they're not my favorite. When I first got them, now we're talking it's back a couple of years, I felt like they were pretty decent for a drugstore formula, but now that drugstore formulas have come such a long way, I go back and I try these and I'm just kind of like, meh about them. I don't think they were that great actually. So it's kind of funny how your opinion can change over the years, but kind of as things improve. But this one was Peachy Queen, and I thought it was a really pretty warm color story. It is very pink leaning though, so it's not something that I usually reach for that often. We also have Utopia. And this one, oh my gosh, it's brand new. Oh, you know why? They sent me a new one because I have the other Utopia. I think this one broke. I don't know why I hung on to both. That was kind of silly. But yeah, one of these shades broke right here, and they saw it when I was talking about it on Instagram, and they sent me a brand new one. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one since I already have this one. But to be honest with you, I think I'm going to declutter these palettes just in general because I never use them. Now, one thing that I do want to mention though is that they came out with a new one in this artist series very recently, and on Instagram they were talking about how they improved the formula. So I'm actually very excited about it, and the new palette has a beautiful color story. So I'm probably going to order that one and try it out because if it has a better formula than this, and they definitely improved their formula with these palettes, so I have no doubt that it's going to be better. So I'm excited to try the new one, but I just feel like with these older ones, I should probably go ahead and get rid of them because I'm not a fan of the formula anymore and I never use them. Next up we have CoverGirl, and first we have the J.Cat palette. I don't think this one's available anymore. I think this was when they did their collab with Katy Perry, and it was okay. It wasn't my favorite palette in the world. I'll probably go ahead and declutter this one. I don't even, like I said, I don't think it's available anymore. We also have the True Naked Dazed palette. They sent this to me in PR and I never even opened it because I just don't see myself using this one. So I'm going to put this in my declutter pile as well. I know somebody that I know will want it. And then we have these two palettes, Chocoholic and Peach Punch. These came out, I believe, at the same time, and they were kind of almost like Too Faced spin-offs, I feel like. You had the peachy one, which I think, did it have a scent to it? Yes, it actually has a peach scent as well, and the chocolate one did too. And these, I mean, the True Naked palettes I feel like are a pretty good formula overall. They're very, very smooth. They do have a bit of fallout because they're ultra soft, but I mean, you can see like the pigment is really good on them. If you can deal with a little bit of fallout, I think these are some of the better palettes at the drugstore, at least from the classic brands like CoverGirl and Maybelline and Revlon and all that. I do think that out of those classic brands, they have one of the better eyeshadow formulas. It still doesn't beat brands like ColourPop and BH Cosmetics and like some of the newer, more indie drugstore brands, but as far as the bigger ones go, these are great. So the Chocoholic one just basically had some cooler toned, deeper overall kind of neutrals. You have this beautiful olive green, some of these purpley shades. So I did really like that one a lot, and it has that chocolate scent. And then we have the True Naked Queenship palette. This one came out very recently, I think over the summertime. They sent this to me as well. And I'm not really a huge fan of this one for some reason. I just felt like the color story was a little bit off for me, like a little disjointed. I wasn't quite sure how to use some of these colors together. And they only gave you this one matte shade right here. So I'm probably going to declutter this one because I don't really reach for this at all. I think I swatched it once. And then we have the original True Naked palettes. These are actually years and years old because when I got these, I was still blogging. I remember blogging about them. So we had the Goldens and then Nudes and Roses. And I think they were kind of trying to dupe the Urban Decay Naked palettes with these because I remember walking into Bed Bath & Beyond, which had Harmon inside of it, and they had this huge display that said compare to palettes that are $54 or something like that. And it was clear because they were calling it like a naked palette that they were trying to dupe those. So again, I felt like the formula was good on these, but these are like, I don't know, at least 4 years old, if not a little more at this point. So I should probably go ahead and declutter these, and maybe down the road, if I feel like I want these in my collection again, I can always repurchase them, but I don't know, I don't reach for these anymore. And then last but not least, we have another J.Cat palette. Again, I don't reach for this at all, so I'm going to put this in the declutter pile as well. Wow, so actually from that entire pile, this is all I'm keeping. Not too bad. Okay, so moving right along, my next drawer I have Rimmel palettes and Wet n Wild. These are also two brands that I think are more on the better side of drugstore eyeshadow formulas. Wet n Wild are usually fantastic, as well as Rimmel. There have been some hits and misses along the way, but I think as a general rule, I really like palettes from these two brands a lot. So first, let's look at a really old one from Wet n Wild. This is the Au Naturel palette. I remember this coming out in Walgreens, I want to say, and this was the Nude Awakening. I think they had a couple different versions of it. This one, I didn't feel like the formula was as good as these palettes right here. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter that. And speaking of these, we have the original Comfort Zone palette. They did redo it, which I'll show you in a second, but I just feel like there's nothing like this one. This original formula was a little better than these. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me on that one, because a lot of people really love these. But if you're a fan of these OG Wet n Wild palettes, you know what I'm talking about. There was just nothing like the OG formula of these. They were absolutely fantastic, so creamy. This was at a time when drugstore eyeshadows were horrendous. Like, most of them were really terrible, and these little $5 palettes blew them all out of the water. I always wished that they had come out with more variety and shades of these, and then they did, but they changed the formula. And it's not like a terrible formula by any means. I think it's still really good. It just doesn't necessarily match up to this. And I've really held on to this one for nostalgia reasons. All right, let me find the newer Comfort Zone just so we can compare the two. So the newer one has a couple of transition shades, which actually I do appreciate because this one really didn't. It does have a crease color right here, but it was a shimmer shade. So back in the day, that wasn't like as important. I feel like now people on YouTube are always just saying that you have to use a matte shade in your transition, which you really don't. You can do whatever you want. It's makeup, but that's just what I feel like most people have come to prefer. So they added these two right here. And then the other shades that are in here are pretty much exactly the same, but I mean, you saw how creamy the formula was of the original one, and now when I swipe into this one, I mean, yes, it's creamy, but the shades just don't have like the same vibrancy, I guess. I don't know if it's just me. I mean, they are still a really good formula, but it's not quite the same. So let me just quickly go through these color stories so you can see all the different versions. For this one, we have VI Purple. This one is actually a very close dupe for Natasha Denona's Lila palette. I did a comparison a while back in a video. I have a whole like Wet n Wild dupes video, and I swatched it side by side with the Lila palette, and it was almost spot on. This one here, Not a Basic Peach, is a dupe for one of the Kylie palettes. I don't know if it was the summer one or the vacation one, but again, they really kind of went on like a duping spree with a lot of these palettes. Then here we have Nude Awakening, and this one is just a really pretty cool tone neutral palette. I don't know that it necessarily is a dupe for anything, but I did really like the colors in this one. And then we have Rosé in the Air. This is a very close dupe for the Modern Renaissance palette. I did swatch it side by side in that Wet n Wild video. I'll actually put that above right here so you can see that if you want to at some point. And then Cosmic Collision. This one was a very close dupe for the Prism palette, I think, from ABH. So I believe I talked about that in the video and showed side by side swatches as well. Stop Playing It Safe. This was a close dupe for the Natasha Denona Tropic palette, and this one was definitely also in that video, as well as this one, which is My Glamour Squad, and this one is almost spot on for Soft Glam from Anastasia, so there's that one. In the Smoke. I didn't really notice if this was a dupe for anything in particular. If it is, and I'm not aware, let me know down in the comments, but this one was just more of a cool toned kind of gray and red palette. And then we had the Boo Crew. These were actually, oh, okay, wait a minute. I'm forgetting. Yes, these three right here were from a Halloween collection. I don't know if it was this year or last year. It's totally like, my mind is blank right now. I think it was from this past year, 2019. But we had In the Smoke, Coffin Break, and then the Boo Crew. So these, I don't believe they were dupes for anything, but there was something about these palettes, these three in particular, that didn't seem to line up formula-wise with the other original ones, like the ones that are not limited edition, and I think these were. So maybe they just kind of like skimped out on the formula a little bit or something because they were limited. I don't know, but let me know if you guys had the same experience down in the comments below. But I'm going to hang on to all of those just because I really do like them as a rule. And then we have the Rimmel palettes, and I did do a whole video on these two. I swatched them all, so I'll go ahead and link that up there in case you're interested. But these palettes, again, are some of the better ones at the drugstore, and while there have been a few misses along the way, I feel like for the most part they're very good. First we have the Thunderstorm edition. So this one was mostly a cooler tone palette. You have these dusty pink and purple shades, the greens, really, really pretty. But this one, I want to say the formula wasn't like quite as good. I know cooler tones can sometimes be trickier for brands to formulate. And then we have the Crimson edition. This one was really good formula-wise, and it reminded me a lot of the Urban Decay Naked Cherry palette. And I think in that Rimmel video that I did, I compared the two side by side. the Spice Edition. This one is probably my favorite as far as formula goes. I just felt like they did a wonderful job with the formula. And again, I think warmer tones seem to be more easy to formulate well, while the cooler tones can tend to fall flat sometimes. So that may be why, but I just felt like the formula of this one was better than the other ones. We also had the Wow edition, and this one wasn't necessarily one of my favorites just because it's mostly all shimmer shades. If not, I think the only one that's not is this dark shade down here. So this one wasn't really one of my favorites or one that I used that much, but next we have the Rainbow edition. This one I felt like was mostly matte shades actually, with just one or two shimmer shades, and it wasn't my favorite formula-wise either. I didn't feel like the shimmer shades were that bright or vibrant on the eyes. I don't know, it just kind of fell a little flat for me. It was a little powdery. Then we have the Electric Violet edition. This one is a beautiful purple palette if you love purples. And I think the color stories of all these are something that you also don't find at the drugstore, which is one of the reasons why I loved these so much, because they just kind of went out of the box and did something a little bit different. Usually at the drugstore, the companies are focusing more on just like neutrals because that's what most people buy. But they really kind of like went crazy and did so many different varieties and shade ranges. So that's why I really like these a lot. And then we have this one, which is in the original packaging where they first came out. And this one is London Nudes Calling. And it was just like a basic neutral palette. It reminds me a lot of the Naked 3 from Urban Decay. And then we have the Reloaded edition. So this one was one of the newer ones. And I felt like they took one of these other ones, I think it was this one, the Color Edition, and just switched a couple of shades, and that was it. Like they took out the green, they took out this mustardy yellow color, they took out some of these deeper ones down here, and I think they just tried to make it a little bit more maybe like cohesive, which I really did feel like this one didn't make a whole lot of sense with a lot of the colors. Like I just felt like it was kind of hard for me to make looks with it. And with this one, I still feel like that a little bit because it's mostly a warm tone palette, but then you have this random cooler purple and blue, and they kind of just don't line up with the rest of the colors. So I don't know if it's just me, but I just felt like these two weren't really my favorite in the line. And then next we have the Jewel Rocks edition. This is actually one of my favorites, and at first, when I first saw it, I didn't necessarily think I was gonna love it, but it almost has like this beautiful Santa Fe sort of a vibe, really interesting colors in here, like these mustardy yellows, and these beautiful sort of corally reds. These greens are gorgeous. I mean, just really interesting color combination, and I loved making looks with this. I didn't think I would when I first saw it, but I just feel like it's a very unique color story overall. And then the last one I have, this is actually the first one. It's 01 Nude Edition. And this one reminds me a lot of just the Urban Decay Naked palette, the original one. It also looks a lot like that Demi Lovato palette that I showed you from earlier in the video by NYC. Again, just very, very similar color story with that one. So anyway, guys, that is all of my Rimmel and Wet n Wild. I don't think I'm going to be getting rid of anything from either brand just because I really do enjoy all of these palettes. All right, so next drawer, I have Maybelline, L'Oreal, Revlon, and I also had this Wet n Wild palette, which didn't fit in the drawer above. That's why I had it down there. This was the Color Icon 32 pan eyeshadow palette, and this one just has so many shades in it. It's a large palette, but it's also nice and small and compact, which is nice, and it's a good formula. It's just like their other 10 pan palettes that I was showing, so I do want to hang on to this one. I really just got it this fall, and I haven't played with it that much yet, so just wanted to show you that one really quick. All right, and then let's start with these little Revlon palettes really quick. We have Maverick and Enigma, and these palettes, I think I'm probably going to declutter. I was kind of impressed with the formula because Revlon formula has been awful. Like in the past, I've gotten Revlon palettes and gotten rid of them immediately because the shadows were so bad. And then they really did improve the formula with these. I felt like they were really nicely pigmented, very creamy and soft. But what is with these pan sizes? Like, they are so tiny. My pinkies are really small and I can barely get my pinky in them, and forget about the rest of my fingers. They're just teeny tiny and kind of awkward to use. I mean, I guess for travel they would be really great, but just trying to get even like a fluffy brush into one of these pans, you always grab the next shade next to it. So I just feel like these aren't worth holding on to. Plus the formula reminds me a lot of the CoverGirl ones, so I'm gonna go ahead and declutter these. So then next let's talk about L'Oreal. We have the La Palette Nude 1 and 2, and then I also have the Paradise Enchanted palette, which is on the newer side. I am waiting for L'Oreal to update their eyeshadow formula. These have been around now for so many years, and they really don't release eyeshadow palettes very often. The first one they came out with after these, which I want to say have been out for maybe like the last 4 or 5 years, was this one right here, and that's it. And Maybelline is always coming out with new ones, so I'm not quite sure why, but I felt like these palettes were a total fail. I actually don't know why I've hung on to them all these years, but they just are not a great formula. Again, very powdery, kind of chalky. They blend right away on your eyes. At the time when they first released, when drugstore makeup was terrible, I thought they were pretty decent. I remember giving them a fairly good review on my blog. But comparing these now to some of the better formulas that are out there at the drugstore, I just feel like these are a huge miss. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter these. And then also the Paradise Enchanted palette, it's pretty, but it wasn't my favorite formula either. I don't remember loving this one. I felt like the shimmer shades were very pigmented. I think it was the mattes that I didn't like because, again, they just felt like very chalky and they blended away really easily. They didn't have a lot of pigmentation. So I'm probably just going to go ahead and declutter this too. It makes me kind of sad. I wish L'Oreal would have a better formula than this, but it just doesn't. And then moving on to Maybelline, we have these City Mini palettes, and I think compared with Maybelline's older eyeshadow formula, like the ones that were in the little quads or the 6-pan ones that they used to have, these were a lot better. I think they were definitely an improvement. I have Matte About Town, which is all mattes. And then I have this one, which is High Rise Sunset. I don't know if these were limited edition summer collection ones. I kind of feel like they might have been. This one, which was a collab with Shayla, was actually one of my favorite formulas. And then we have Brooklyn Nudes right here and Blushed Avenue. So while I do think the formula of these is better than they used to be, I still don't think it's like a fantastic, like you need to run right out and buy this kind of a formula. I mean, the matte shades are, again, like that really, like you can kind of see how like dusty and powdery they are. They just kind of blend away to nothing. And then the shimmer shades, same thing. Like they're just not super pigmented. So I don't know. I might go ahead and just declutter these. Some of these are actually brand new almost, like hardly touched. I may hang on to the Shayla one because I did think this one was good and I used it quite a bit. But as far as these go, I don't see myself reaching for them that much. And then we have the Matte Bar. This one was a newer release from them. It's not super new. I think it came out last year. And this one I felt like the formula was actually a little bit better. Like the matte shades feel a little creamier, a little bit more substantial. They're still not great. I mean, as you can see, they kind of just like blend away. So I don't know. I don't see myself reaching for this one that much either because I don't use all matte palettes that often. I'll probably go ahead and declutter this one as well. Next up, we have the Burgundy Bar. I don't remember loving this one that much either. It was mostly shimmer shades. You had these two mattes down here at the end. And if I remember correctly, I think the mattes in this palette were okay. Like they were pretty decent as far as like the pigmentation goes. I mean, you can see compared to those other ones I swatched, these are a little bit more like, or I should say less powdery. But I don't think the shimmer shades in here were that great. I felt like they had a lot of fallout. They were really crumbly. They swatch nicely, or at least they pick up nicely on your finger, but then when you go to blend them, they're just kind of lackluster and again, very like patchy. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one as well. Really thinning out my Maybelline collection here. Actually, this whole drawer. I got rid of all the L'Oreal, most of the Maybelline. Here we have the Lemonade Craze and Soda Pop. This is when they started to get a little bit better with their formula. I still don't think these are fantastic, wonderful palettes, but they're workable, and I did really like the color stories of these, so I think I'll probably hold on to these for now. And then we have the Nudes of New York, which is my favorite Maybelline palette ever made. This is just came out really recently. It's a pretty solid dupe for Soft Glam. I mean, like, just as an example, take a look at like this matte shade compared to some of the other ones that I showed you, how it's so smooth, it's so rich and pigmented, they blend on the eyes beautifully, and the shimmer shades too are just way more rich and pigmented than any of the other ones in Maybelline's collection thus far. So I really do like this formula. I hope they continue with it. Honestly, I think they did a great job at improving everything. So definitely hanging on to this one. All right, so moving on to LA Girl. All of these palettes are actually more recent purchases, while these iLux ones I've had for a while now. And I feel like I'm probably going to declutter these because they're definitely not the same formula as their newer ones. At the time when I purchased these, I thought that they were pretty good, but I just feel like it doesn't quite live up to the drugstore palettes that are out now. I mean, I think the formula is decent, don't get me wrong, but it's just not quite, like, I mean, as you can see, the mattes are a little bit more on the sheer side. The shimmers too, I mean, it's just okay. And they are really cute little travel-friendly palettes, but I have so many little palettes now that I feel like I get tons of use out of that I don't feel like I need these. But these come in the shades Eternalize, and this one is Hypnotize. I have Harmonize, which is a little bit more warm toned. This one was one of my favorites, Idolize. It had these cooler tone taupes. It was really pretty. And then this one is Energize. It's kind of more of peachy neutrals. And then this one had rosy tones, and it was Sensualize. I mean, they were all really pretty, but I just feel like there are better formulas out there now. And next up, we have the Born Exclusive palette. This one was a holiday release, so I don't think it's available anymore. It may still be on their website, but I got mine at CVS, and it was supposed to be a limited edition. I haven't seen it in stores anymore, so I'm kind of thinking it's probably sold out at this point. But this is one that I wished they would make permanent because it is gorgeous. And honestly, like one color is just more beautiful than the next. These purples, the blues, I mean, it is so stunning. These rosy pink tones over here are just beautiful. The formula is amazing. Like these are so creamy and so buttery, and the matte shades are beautiful. Here, I'll just quickly like swatch a couple so you can see. But I mean, like the formula has come such a long way from that one down there, which hardly showed up at all. And then you have these beautiful, smooth, soft textures that are just way more pigmented. And I just love this palette, so I'm definitely going to hang on to it. And then last but not least, we have their 16 pan palettes. The first ones that came out were the Hot Heat. I want to say these came out last year, maybe around this time or in the spring. And this is originally what made me fall in love with their shadow formula, because they improved so much from these little ones right here. I mean, just beautiful, creamy eyeshadows. They're so stunning. And these palettes, like the color stories, were so pretty. So this one was the Hot Heat. Where's the name of it? This was Aloha Vibes. So it just had kind of a tropical vibe to it, really beautiful. And then this one was called Vacay Everyday. And I think this one was like a little more neutral, or like rosy neutrals. So this one's great if you love like pinks and purples. It had a couple of orangey and copper shades down here as well. And then next they came out with the Fierce and Wild collection over the summer. So this one is, let's see, this one's Untamed. And this one I felt like looked very similar to this one. Just, I don't know, the color stories kind of really lined up. It actually looked like a combination of this one with the greens and then this one with the pinks. So it kind of seemed to have elements of both, and I felt like there were some repeat shades in here. And then the other Fierce and Wild palette was called Instinct, and this one looks like one that just came out very recently as well on the Ulta website. I didn't buy it, but the reason I didn't buy it was because I felt like it looked very similar to this one. In here you have a lot of just regular brown neutrals, but then you have this row of brights with the yellow and then the blues. So I thought this one was pretty as well. And then we have the Pro Mastery. This one I just got super recently, like last week. And this one has those beautiful pink tones again with some neutrals. And I did think it looked really similar to the Vacay Everyday palette. I've been getting a lot of requests to swatch these side by side and show how, you know, similar they are, or if there's any duplicate shades. So I will definitely do that, likely on my Instagram page very soon, just so we can kind of see what the differences are. But I really love this color story so much. It's really right up my alley. So I'm going to keep all of these palettes because I've really been enjoying them a lot. All right, so moving on to Morphe, I have 4 of their larger palettes that I got in PR because I just got on their PR list a couple months ago. And then I have the 4 Jaclyn Hill Vault palettes that I purchased myself last year. So let's start with these. I have no idea why I kept these in the boxes. I should probably get rid of those because it's taking up space. But the first one is Bling Boss, and this one had kind of that purple toned vibe. These palettes, to be honest with you, I am not impressed with them at all. I felt like they applied okay to the eyes. Some of them kind of blended away a little bit. Some of them would get muddy, but I think the thing that I like the least about these is that they don't last on the eyes, even though I could get some really pretty looks out of them. Like within an hour, I would just look in the mirror and they would either look all blended together and muddy or just gone completely. So anyway, this one was Ring the Alarm, and this one was like a really warm tone neutral palette. Then we had Dark Magic. This one was a really pretty cool tone palette. I mean, it's really a shame that these don't hold up on the eyes because I really did like the color story of them. I mean, I suppose I could try using them with different primers and stuff. I know I tried it at least with my Lorac primer that I was using last year, but I've found a few new ones since then that I like. So I don't know. I may give these another go just because I do like the color story and I like that they're a little more edited down than these larger palettes, but I don't know, I just was really disappointed. This one was Armed and Gorgeous. So anyway, this one had like more yellow orange shades. This green was really pretty too. So I don't know. I guess I'll hang on to these. I'm going to get rid of these boxes though. So I'll see if I can make them work. But if I can't, then I'm definitely going to go ahead and declutter. And then we have these larger palettes that they just sent me very recently. The first one is the 35H Hot Spot palette. And these, I mean, this one is beautiful. It's a really pretty summer palette. You have like all these blues and turquoises on this side, and then you have the warmer tones with a few bright pops of color on this side. I don't really get the hype of Morphe's formula. I mean, they are a little bit more on the affordable side, but like I don't think they're better than ColourPop or BH Cosmetics or Juvia's Place or anything that's like within the same price range. You know, and the packaging and stuff like that, it just makes me think of like the private label palettes that you can get. So I don't know. I'm not a super big Morphe fan. I think that they're okay, but I don't get the hype. Like there's so much hype with these guys. And then this one is the Second Nature palette. So this one, I just swatched a few of the shades when I first got it, but this one's just an overall like warm tone neutral palette. And I felt like a lot of the shades in this one look the same. There's not a lot of color variety in here, which in a way I feel like it's kind of a waste because you have all this space to put all of these different shadows and you could really do a nice variety like the first one here. But I think so many of these would look the same on your eyes. So I don't know. I'm not really too big a fan of this one. And then this one is 35V Stunning Vibes. I do like the color story of this one too because it has a ton of cool tones in it. So I definitely appreciate more of a variety in this one for sure. And then the 35I is Icy Fantasy, and this one is really new. It just came out like last week, I want to say. This one was a collab that they did with Pony Park, and it's more of like a pastel-y kind of a palette, which really isn't my thing so much. And I felt like the shades in this one, like a lot of pastels are, they're kind of chalky on the skin a little bit and kind of sheer as well. So pastels really aren't my thing. I'm going to hang on to it just because it's new, and if there's any kind of like dupes that come out, I want to be able to do some comparisons. So I'm going to keep it for now, especially since they sent it to me, but I don't feel like this is a palette that I would have run right out and purchased myself. All right, so in the next drawer, I have some J.Cat Beauty palettes, also Hard Candy and Flower Beauty. So let's start with these three J.Cat palettes. The first one is Sunset Boulevard, and these come in packaging very similar to Morphe. I feel like they're kind of, you know, on the cheaper looking side. They feel kind of like cheap and not well put together or anything, but the formula of these is actually very good. It surprised me as being a lot better than Morphe, and it is more of like an affordable brand as well. I don't know if Ulta still carries these, but this is where I got it from. But I mean, the pigmentation on these shadows is really fantastic. Even the matte shades I feel like are really good, and I loved the warmer toned color story of this one. So let me just show you a couple of shades really quick. I didn't do so many swatches in my other videos. I feel like this is going to make this video long, but it also gives you a little bit more kind of information about it. So I feel like there is a little bit of fallout with these shades because they're so super soft, but they just look really pretty on the eyes. So this one is Sunset Boulevard. I have two more. Downtown LA is like an all brown palette. I love this one because it has so many taupes and cooler tone browns in it, which I feel like are so hard to find. A lot of neutral palettes these days lean a little bit more warm, so I did really love that about this one, and I actually get a lot of requests asking me for cooler tone neutral palettes, so this one is definitely one of them, I would say. There's a couple of warm tones sprinkled in, but for the most part, it's overall cool. And then this one was Melrose Avenue. If I can get it open, there we go. So this one also very pretty, has these pinks and purple vibes. I don't even know if they make this palette anymore, so I guess I'll have to check that out. And then next we have some palettes from Hard Candy. This is from their Look Pro collection. So this one's Blushful Nudes, and it reminds me a lot of Huda Beauty's New Nudes. Actually, they tried to do like these textured shadows like are in the New Nudes, also the glitters. I mean, it really is a dupe, or at least it's intended to be. And I find that these palettes are okay formula-wise. They're not my favorite, but they're actually pretty decent. The shimmer shades are really smooth. They're a little tougher to pick up than in some other palettes, but they also don't have a lot of fallout, which is a nice thing. And then the matte shades, I mean, I feel like they're a little bit more on the powdery side, but they're not terrible. So I would say as far as palettes go, I think these are definitely workable, especially if you use a primer with them. So this one was, like I said, Blushful Nudes, and then we have What's the color of this one? I don't know. I don't see the name on this one at all. It just says eyeshadow down here, but I'm pretty sure it was called Rose Gold. And this one looks like a dupe for the Huda Beauty Rose Gold palette as well. I felt like it comes pretty close color-wise. And this one is called Earthy Vixen. So you have some earthy tones in here, the greens, the yellow, the browns. You also have some reds and pinks in it as well. Not my favorite of all the color stories, but it's not bad. And then we have this green one, which is actually infused with hemp oil, and this one is called Smoke Out. So this one unfortunately has two pressed glitters, which are not my favorite, but I did like all of the green shades in here. And these are really affordable too. I want to say they're like $10. And this one was the all matte eyeshadow palette. Again, this one doesn't have a name on the back. It just says Matte Eyeshadow Pro Palette. I mean, I felt like as far as matte eyeshadow palettes go, this one is pretty good. It's decent. So I'll probably hang on to this one for a little bit longer. And then last but not least, we have some palettes from Flower Beauty. So first we have these Wanderlust palettes, these little tiny cute travel ones. This one is Midnight Manhattan and this one is Austin Downtown Dusk. And these actually had a very creamy sort of a formula. It was really interesting. It almost felt like a cream to powder, but I think they were just super creamy eyeshadows. Unfortunately, I just don't find myself reaching for these all that much. The color stories, you know, they're just like not really my thing, and I have a hard time picturing looks that I want to do with them, so I'm probably going to put these in the declutter pile. They're actually falling apart too, like this is totally coming off on both of them. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna put those over here. And then next we have the Beauty Flash Full Face Palette. This one I actually really like, although it's doing the exact same thing. Oh my gosh, this just totally fell off. The glue came apart. So anyway, this one I do like. It's a really pretty face palette. You have your eyeshadows up here. You also have a bronzer, two blushes, and a highlighter. I think the blush shades are a little bit too small for blushes, but you could use the entire thing on your eyes if you wanted to. So it's definitely a very like multi-use functional palette. Not to mention that the shades are just really, really soft and pretty. I mean, it's not going to be something that's going to give you any type of bold or more metallic look. All the shadows are matte actually, except for this one right here. And I didn't remember this being a super shiny metallic lid shade. It's just like maybe satiny almost. So this isn't going to give you any type of bold looks, but if you're into just really soft, pretty looks, I think this was a really nice travel palette. And then we have these palettes right here. I have Sugar Rush, Suns Blazing, and then I have these two original ones. I think they renamed these into something else, but mine are old. So I have Warm Natural, which I want to say this one has something about concrete, I think it's called now. And then this one is called Golden Natural. So these are just really pretty palettes. They remind me a lot of the CoverGirl formula in that they're very, very smooth, but also really soft with a ton of fallout. So as you can see, like, you know, they look a lot like the CoverGirl ones when swatched. They're very soft on the eyes. They're not going to be like that really super creamy, buttery kind of feel. They're more like smooth and blendable, if anything. The only thing I'll say about these, though, is that if you don't use them with a primer, they tend to kind of blend together and get a little bit muddy on your eyes because they're so smooth. They just kind of like all blend together sometimes. So I do think you need to definitely use a primer with these, but I'm going to hang on to them anyway because I really enjoy the color stories a lot. All right, so next is my Milani collection, and I have all of the new gilded palettes that have come out, as well as a lot of their older formula. And to be honest with you, I love their older formula so much, and I'm very disappointed in the new one. I just feel like it doesn't hold a candle to their original, mainly because I feel like they're a little more dry and dusty and powdery overall, and they tend to blend away on the eyes and look kind of muddy and all blend together. They don't last as long on the eyes either. So I really wish they didn't change their formula, but I am going to hold on to these new gilded palettes just because they're newer and I may need to do some comparisons with them at some point. So let's go through the gilded ones first, and then I'll show you all of my favorites from the originals. So first we have these three that came out over the summer. We have Gilded Violet, Gilded Jade, and Gilded Ember. And I mean, the color stories are really, really pretty. Here's the purple one, and these actually had some face powders in them as well, plus 9 eyeshadows. And I did really love the color stories of these, but the formula I just really wish was a little bit better. So there's the green one. And then here we have Gilded Ember, which was more of a warm toned palette. And then these two, I think, are the ones that came out first from the Gilded collection. These were the first of the new formula. So we have Gilded Rouge and Gilded Noir. And I think these came out last springtime. So these, again, as you can see, like by how messy they are, they're just like so powdery and they have tons of fallout. And then we have Gilded Noir. So this one's a little bit more of a deeper toned color story. And then these are the 6 new ones that just came out very recently. We have Gilded Pastel. I would say this is my least favorite of all of them just because these pastels are very chalky on the skin. Even though I have really pale skin, they still just don't show up that well on me. And then we have Luster Light. This one is really beautiful color story wise, and I do think some of the shimmers in this one are really creamy and really beautiful, but then others are a little bit more on the crumbly side, and I find that with all of these. Gilded Nude, this one is also really beautiful. I love the dusty purples in this one, and it also has some really pretty rich warm tones. Gilded Gold reminds me a lot of the Natasha Denona Gold palette. This one's a little bit different. It's not an exact dupe, but I feel like it has a similar vibe. And then Gilded Coast, this is one of my favorites, honestly. This is such a beautiful palette. And like I said, I think that the formula of the shimmer shades is decent, but then you have other ones that just don't pick up well or that are really like, loosely packed and they don't adhere well to the eyes. And then the matte shades, they're very silky, but they just kind of like blend away to nothing. So even like a darker shade like that, it almost just disappears when you try to apply it. So it's the mattes that I'm mostly disappointed in with these. But anyway, next we have the Gilded Twilight, and this is a really pretty purple tone palette. All right, so all the Gilded ones are their newest palettes, and then we had these. So we have Bold Obsessions, and these little palettes were so beautiful. The formula is amazing on them. The matte shades in comparison, I'll just show you quickly compared to the newer ones, how these swatch. I mean, they're so much richer. And even as you blend, they don't go anywhere. They're just really velvety and really true to color, which I love. And the shimmer shades in these are fantastic as well. I mean, I didn't have any complaints with them. They have a different feel than the gilded ones. These feel almost like buttery textured, and these feel just very soft. But I think, they're super pigmented as well. So why they changed the formula of these, I have no idea, because everybody that I know on YouTube absolutely loved these. And then we have Most Loved Mattes. This one was just a really beautiful matte palette. Soft and Sultry. This is probably my favorite of all of them. It was a little more on the cool tone side. It's just the perfect neutral palette. So I would say if you like any of these, try to find them while you can, because I've seen them going on clearance in most stores now. So I feel like they're going to be gone really soon. And then we have Pure Passion, and this one was more of a warm tone palette. Again, just a gorgeous color story. And actually, this was the first Gilded palette that they came out with. So this came after these, and it was the start of the bad formula. So Gilded Desires, even though it's in the same packaging as these, it has the same formula as these newer ones. Just really like silky, and it just blends right away. Like when you go to swatch it, it's not as pigmented as the older formula. And then you had these shimmer shades that feel almost like a cream formula. They're really interesting and very like super pigmented, but the mattes are mostly like what ruins the new formula for me. So anyway, that one's Gilded Desires. And then we have their Everyday Eyes palette. So these are the first palettes that they had, and honestly, the formula of these is amazing as well. It's very similar to these square ones right here. So we have Smoky Essential. I actually just bought this one recently because I'm so afraid that they're going to be discontinued, and this is one that I didn't have yet. So I haven't even opened this one, but it's really pretty, cool toned gray and blue palette. Just thought that was so pretty. This one is O2 Bare Necessities, which is a beautiful, just easy to wear neutral palette. And these are great for travel too, because they're a little bit more on the smaller side. This one is Must Have Metallics. This is, I think, one of the newest of this series that had come out maybe like 2 years ago before they started all the Gilded ones. And this one was definitely more of like a warm toned palette. And this was another one of the newer ones of the Everyday Eyes. This was Basic Mattes. It came out around the same time. And that one was beautiful too. It's just a gorgeous all matte palette. And I love these matte shades so much. They were some of my favorite matte shades from the drugstore or high end. So it's just killing me that they changed it. And then this one was another favorite. This was Must Have Naturals, and this one was a neutral palette also, but it's a little bit more cool toned. It's actually kind of like a smaller version of the Soft and Sultry palette. And then the last one was Earthy Elements. I remember when this one first came out, and it was right around the time when everybody was getting into more of the oranges and the reds, and everybody was loving this one. It was kind of like when Modern Renaissance first came out. I remember so many people talking about this palette because everyone was looking for these warm tones, and this one was just gorgeous. This orange and this brown were just stunning colors. So I'll just show you these colors really quick. I mean, look at this orange. It's so smooth. And that coppery brown too. It's just the most beautiful palette. So again, definitely if you're interested in these, I would go and grab them as soon as you can before they completely go away. I did see them at CVS recently, so I think you can definitely find them there if your CVS has Milani. And then next up I have my e.l.f. collection. So let's start with some of the older e.l.f. palettes. The first one we have is Modern Metals. This one actually isn't super old. I think it came in a kit for holiday, not this past holiday, but the one before in 2018. And it came in a set with a bunch of other things at Ulta. Like I want to say there was like a lip gloss and a blush palette. And I felt like this palette was pretty good. I think these little slimmer ones are not a bad formula at all. I don't like it quite as much as these newer ones, but it's decent. So especially for the price. So that was that one. And then I have the Rose Gold Sunset version. This one is a little bit older now, and it just has these really beautiful warm tones in it. Then we have the Mad for Matte palette. This was an all matte palette and got a lot of attention when it first came out because it kind of has a similar color story to the Urban Decay Naked palette, but it was all matte, so it was a little bit different, but it just has those same kind of neutral tones to it. And then Mad for Matte 2 was definitely a big deal. I remember so many YouTubers talking about this when it first came out because it had those warm tones again, and at the time, like everybody was super into warm tones. So this one was a really beautiful one too, and formula was good. And then we have the Nude Rose Gold version. This looked a lot like the Urban Decay Naked 3, and this one wasn't all mattes. It had some shimmers mixed in as well. I mean, the shimmer shades in this one weren't like super metallic or anything, but it's good if you just want more subtle looks. And then this one was the Prism eyeshadow palette. Oh, I forgot all about this one. This one is super old, and I really, oh my gosh, I haven't reached for this in such a long time. It's an all shimmer palette. I think I'm probably going to declutter this one because I don't know how old it is and I just don't reach for it anymore. Then we have these two chromatic eyeshadow palettes, and I don't think I really even use these much at all. I think they sent them to me in PR a while back, and yeah, like this one is completely untouched. So maybe I'll just keep it that way and give it away to somebody that I know because like my sister is really into e.l.f. eyeshadows. So it's just a really pretty color story. This one was Bird of Paradise. And then I think there was like a green or turquoise one called Posh Peacock. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah, that one is really beautiful as well. I love the color story of that. I just feel like I have it in so many other palettes, and seeing as how these are brand new, I feel like they would be great to give away. And then next up we have their 18 pan palettes. These are definitely my favorite from their whole line, especially this one, Earth and Ocean. I did a video on this one a while back with like 7 different looks. Oh my gosh, it's such a mess though because this shade is so soft and it just kind of gets everywhere. So I'm gonna have to clean this up. But this palette is so super versatile, and even though it has these blues over here, and I'm not really somebody who wears blues pretty often, these are just more really wearable blues. They're more like on the gray side, so they don't look super bright under eyes, except for this one and this one. I feel like these two shades are ones I wouldn't reach for as much, but this one, like this deep kind of turquoise greenish blue, is so beautiful, and these greens are gorgeous as well. You also have some neutrals in it, so I just think it's such a versatile palette overall, and I love it. The New Classics is another one that was really great. It kind of, in some ways, reminds me of the Biba palette from Natasha Denona a little bit. It just has those like dusty neutrals with some more subtle colors in it. And then we have Opposites Attract. This one is also one that I really like. I haven't used it as much as I wanted to. And as you can see, the shades in these, some of them are so soft, they have a tendency to break. So you have to be really careful with these. But this one was another really kind of unique color story because you had some of the cooler tone like purples and greens on this side. And then you had these warmer tones over here. So I like how they mix both. And then we have the 18 Hit Wonders. I got this one very recently and I really didn't use it all that much. There's a few shades that I used, but this one, again, you have your cooler side over here and then your warmer side over here. And it's just a really pretty palette if you like brighter colors. But even if you're not into brights, there are plenty, like this bottom row here, that are more subtle, and then the top row as well. It's really just this middle one that has a little bit more of those brights. And then next we have these three that came out for holiday this year. So this one, oh my gosh, they don't even have names on them. So I'm just gonna have to wing it. But I wanna say they were like, I think sugar and spice and everything nice or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was the spice one with more of these like spicy neutrals. And it reminded me a lot of the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette actually. And I actually did a video comparing these to Natasha Denona palettes because they are some pretty close dupes. And this one was either sugar or everything nice. I honestly don't remember. I think it was sugar. But this one looked a lot like the Natasha Denona Gold palette. It wasn't an exact dupe, but it was pretty close. And then this last one, I actually had a shade break in transit, so it continues to give me trouble and make this palette messy every time I go to put it away. But this one looked kind of like the Biba palette from Natasha Denona. Again, it wasn't an exact dupe, but it had a very similar vibe with all the purples. And then we have these little mini bite-sized palettes that I just got recently. I love these so much. I think the color stories are so cute. The only thing is these are hard to use just one palette by itself because a lot of them don't necessarily have like a good transition shade. So you may have to dip into other palettes or just, you know, use a bunch of them together. But this one is called Pumpkin Pie. I think the formula on these is fantastic. It's just like this one. And then we have Acai. Then this green one is Hot Jalapeno. That one is beautiful. We have Cream and Sugar. This one's probably my favorite. This one's Truffles. And this one I feel like you can get a complete look out of because you have a transition, you have some darker shades like for the outer corner, and then this beautiful taupey gray for the lid. This one is Berry Bad. And then you have Rose Water. And the last one is Carnival Candy. All right, and then next up I have a few palettes from Beauty Creations. So the first one is the Tease Me palette. This is the first of theirs that I ever purchased, and it reminds me a lot of the Huda Beauty New Nudes palette, although this one came out first. And this one I think is probably their most famous palette because when the New Nude palette came out, a lot of people were doing videos comparing this one to that one, and they're not exact dupes. I feel like they have a very similar vibe with all the rosy tone neutrals, but you know, it kind of makes sense to put these types of shades together, so I feel like it was probably just a coincidence. Next up we have the Esmeralda palettes. We have number 1 and 2, and these actually remind me a lot of the Natasha Denona Safari palette. They have a really similar color story with these earthy tones, a little bit more of muted colors overall. But if you're looking for an exact dupe of the Safari palette, check out part 3 in this series because I show an exact shade for shade Safari dupe that's like $8 from C-Color. It's really, really good. This one is good too. It's not an exact dupe for Safari either. It's a little bit different. And then the second one is similar in that it also has these kind of more muted earthy tones, but instead of the greens, you have some more blues in here, and you also have these dusty kind of pink and purple shades as well, mixed with some neutrals. It's another really pretty one. All right, and then next we have the 3 Mini Pro palettes, and I got these very recently. I showed them in a Sunday haul, and they're not actually mini. I was thinking they were going to be small because it's called Mini Pro, and it's hard to tell when you're ordering from a website, but they're actually on the bigger side, especially the pan sizes. I feel like they're very generous. And volume 1 is basically a dupe for the Natasha Denona Sunset palette. It has a really, really similar vibe going on. And then we have volume 2, which had kind of more of an earthy toned vibe, which I really, really like. This one's one of my favorites. And then volume 3 was more of a neutral palette with the 2 pops of blue, which kind of became popular, I feel like, a couple of years ago. Everybody seemed to be doing that. And volume 4, this one's probably my least favorite because of all the pinks in here, because I don't usually wear bright pinks like this on my eyes. I do really like the purples though. I also love the Sugar Mama shade. It's one of my favorites. It's just like this beautiful silvery blue. So I love that one. But this one is probably, like I said, my least favorite out of the 4. All right, so last but not least, we have my Profusion collection. So there's a ton of stuff to go through. Actually, I'm just gonna kind of move these to the side so that we have some room to actually show the palettes. So first up, we have these 20th anniversary edition glitter palettes. These were sent to me in PR, and to be honest with you, I don't really wear glitter on my eyes at all. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter these, but if you like glitters, these are So beautiful. The colors in here were just like so stunning, and I felt like the formula was really good on them too. Just some really unique glitter shades for the eyes, and they're very affordable. So this one was the pink one. I'm not sure where the name of it is on here, but then we have this golden one here. And this one is so pretty as well. Well, I kind of wish I liked glitters, but I just don't feel comfortable putting them on my eye because they can scratch if they get in your eye. Plus, I wear contacts, so I have to be really careful. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in my declutter pile. Next, we have these mixed metals palettes. I'm pretty sure these have been discontinued. I don't remember seeing them on the site in a long time. I want to say I got these at Target, and since Profusion's no longer at Target, I feel like the ones that were in that particular collection are no longer around. Now they're at Walmart, or at least at select Walmarts. So anyway, this one was a really pretty palette. I thought the formula was good. I don't think it's as good as their larger palettes that I'm going to show in a second. So I'll probably go ahead and put this in my declutter pile too, because I really don't reach for it all that often. And then we have the Mixed Metals Peach. So this one was just more like warm toned neutrals and kind of rosy neutrals. So that one was really pretty too, but I think I'm just gonna go ahead and declutter all of these. And then we have this mixed metals one with the rose gold packaging. And that actually looks a lot like the Essence one that I showed earlier in the video. So because I have one that's so similar already, I'm gonna just put this one in the declutter as well. And then this one was called Eyes. This one I also got at Target, and I'm actually sad that this one seems to be discontinued as well because I really enjoyed this palette a lot. I thought these cooler tone neutrals were so beautiful, and it was like $5, but the formula was fantastic on it. So super pigmented, and I used this one so much. I think I'm going to hang on to this even though it is discontinued because I really like it. And then next we have these ones in the little tin packaging. We have Smoky Eyes. Honestly, not my favorite formula, so this one's going to go in the declutter pile as well. I did like the color story of this, like these cooler toned, smokier shades, but I just thought the formula wasn't that great. And actually, they just sent me this Chestnut Eyes one, and I had the original Chestnut Eyes, so there are a few very similar overlapping shades in here, but I think they may have updated the formula because this one feels a lot nicer than the older one did, and it also includes a few additional shades. So I'm going to keep the new one and put the old one in my declutter pile as well. Next up, we have a face palette called Rose Gold Look, and I think this was a Target one as well. I haven't seen it around anymore. And this is one that I had originally, and then I dropped it and a bunch of the shades broke, so I bought it again. But once I bought it the second time, I actually never got a chance to use it. I put it away, and I kind of forgot that it was in there, but this one is no longer on their website, so I'm guessing this is discontinued as well. And since I haven't touched it, I think it might be a good one to give away to somebody that I know, so I'll definitely just put this one aside. And then the next couple of palettes are also discontinued because I haven't seen them on their website. The first one is Confidence. And this one was, it had warm tones in it. It also had these yellows and then a pop of green over here. We had Velvet Matte. This one was an all matte palette. I really only used a couple of shades in this one. I do really like their matte formula a lot. I think it's very velvety and rich and really, really good for the price. But I'm just not super into all matte palettes, so I'll probably put this one in the declutter as well. Temptress is another one that seems to be discontinued, but I actually really like this one a lot, so I'm going to hang on to it. And then we have Infatuation. Now, this is an older version of Infatuation. They actually redid the formula and did it a little bit differently, so I'll probably declutter this one as well, just because I have the new one and it has a lot of the same shades in it. All right, so then all of these are actually still available for purchase. So we have the Eye and Cheek palette first. And this one it's actually really pretty. I like the way it's set up because you have your cooler toned eyeshadows and blushes on this side, and then your warmer tones on this side with the blushes and then highlighters as well. So I'm going to keep that one. And then you have kind of like a little mini version of that one called Pink Nudes, and you have 3 groupings of eyeshadows up here, and then you have a highlight, a blush, and then another highlight on this side. So this one is really cute as well and super affordable. Next up we have the Sultry palette. This is one of the first ones I ever got from them. This one's actually kind of getting older now. I believe I talked about this like in one of my very first YouTube videos. They sent me a PR package and I opened everything on camera. It was terrible, terrible quality video, but if you ever feel like looking back to, like, I want to say it was like my second or third video that I ever filmed on my channel, and I think I was holding this up in the thumbnail with the green and being like, like I had this, wide-eyed look on my face. It was like really stupid. But anyway, I do like this palette a lot. And then we have the Wanderlust palette, and this one they have redone. So if you look on their website, it has the square pans now. I feel like this was the older one that was at Target originally. And then this is the new Infatuation. So this one has the square pans. They also added this bluish shade as well as this yellow. So the other one, if you remember, it was all like the pink and purple. And I like this one. I'm not crazy about like the hotter pinks, but I do really love some of these dustier colors. I think they're really pretty. Then we have Pro Pigment. This one actually is very similar to Infatuation. I feel like the color stories, hold on a second. I got these at different times, so I really didn't even make the connection until now, but I'd like to see what they look like side by side. Yeah, I mean, I think Pro Pigment on this side, it has a little bit more neutrals, while this one is mostly those pinks and purples, but they are very close. I feel like there is some shade overlap between them for sure. Next, we have the Chocolates palette, and this one I've said many times on my channel, I feel like it's a dupe for the Natasha Denona Gold palette. It's really, really similar. I think I did a video on dupes back in like the end of 2018 where I showed a whole bunch of dupes for high-end palettes, and this one was one of them. Now, of course, there's a few exact dupes for the gold palette from brands like Alter Ego and C-Color, but at the time, this one was the only existing dupe. Next, we have Siennas. This one came out around the same time as the chocolates, and this one was just more warm tones again, very similar to Natasha Denona's Sunset palette. Again, it has that sunset vibe going on, so this one's a really pretty one. And then next up we have the Paradise palette. This one is pretty with all the greens and the purples. I'm not sure, I think this one's still available, but I don't know if they revamped this one and put the square pans or if it still has the round pans. But I'm gonna hang on to this one anyway because I really like the color story of it a lot. Next up we have the Festival palette. I really thought the formula of this one was good. I don't know if it's like any different or if for some reason just the shades that are in here were easier to formulate, but I mean, look at the pigment on that. Like, it's really, really nice. And the blue, I mean, blues aren't always like the easiest thing, but I just felt like this one really performed. And I always recommend this one if you're looking for like a rainbow palette because it's really inexpensive and I feel like the quality is really good on it. And then the last of the big palettes I have is Mirage. This one I think is like one of the more recent ones. There's also Sunkissed, and now they just came out with the Love Struck one as well. But this one is again just that sunset vibe. This one was a close dupe for ColourPop's Here Comes the Sun palette that came out over the summer. They actually came out around the same time. I want to say I did compare these either in a video or on Instagram, and they're so super close. So that one from ColourPop is sold out, but this one's still available. So if you like this type of color story, I definitely recommend this one. I thought the formula was really good as well. And then we have these smaller $5 palettes, and I thought the quality on these were so super good as well. This one's the Royals palette. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Subculture. And then this one is the Shimmers. I'll probably declutter this one because it's an all shimmer palette, which I really don't feel like I reach into all that often. Sapphires is one of my favorites. I love the color story on this one. It has these really beautiful blues, the teal. It also has like a perfect neutral transition color here. So this is a great one that I usually pull out in the summertime. And then we have the mattes, which is an all matte palette. And again, formula wise, it's just so good. Like, these are just some of the most velvety shadows at the drugstore. They're just like really pigmented, really smooth. They blend beautifully on the eyes. So for $5, these, you really can't go wrong with them. And then the last one is the Classics. So this one is just like your everyday neutral palette. It mostly leans to the warm side, but this is a great one too, just for travel and stuff like that. So anyway, I think that does it for this video. I think it's been a long one. It's probably the longest one in this series, but I just wanted to try to fit everything in and finish it once and for all. So thank you guys so much for hanging in there with me. Again, if you missed parts 1, 2, and 3, I linked them earlier in the video up at the top of the screen, so you can go ahead and check out that playlist. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.